Welcome back, YouTubers, and in today's episode I'm going to show you how to hack FlySpy by Richard Aplin. Richard created possibly one of the most interesting protection systems I've come across in my hacking career, at least for the Amstrad CPC.
Welcome to FlySpy.
I like the nod to Manic Miner here, with the keyboard playing the music below. But it did suffer the same bug that Manic Miner did, which is to add in sharp keys that didn't exist. I'm just showing you that the game loading up after we've hacked it, and then I'm going to demonstrate the steps, or at least show you the steps, using my favourite tool, Adam, or DAMS as it was known in Europe. I'd like to give a big shout out to Cartman's W for your very kind words on my previous blog entry. I hope you find this one just as informative. Back in the 80s, most of the protection systems were very commercial, very predictable. But sometimes you have the Michelin Star of protection systems that come along, and I understand, searching on the internet, that Richard Aplin was around 15 years old when he wrote this. So fair play to you, fella, if you ever find this channel. So what do I mean by interesting? Well, normally we have a standard loader, as you're all very familiar with. So let me just demonstrate. I'm going to load the cassette. So I'm going to type in load just to see what happens. Press play. Do you see what happened there? I didn't even type run or the usual run command. The system itself just seemed to magically start. And this is why I think this is one of the most interesting protection systems that I worked on back in the day. So let me just reset the machine. And I'm going to rewind the cassette. Okay, so let's get cracking. No pun intended there. We're going to load up my favourite tool of all time back in the 80s, and that's Adam. And as you know, I like to load it up into an extra RAM bank. I have to apologise for my squeaky chair. I've thrown as much oil in it as I can. Okay, right. I'll provide a link to the disk, but you're familiar with hopefully they're familiar with the rsx.adm routine that was in the Dizzy Hack tutorial. So we're not going to do anything strange yet. So let's go back to mode 2 and call ampersand A200, having assembled that. We want tape, and then we're going to do a file info. Okay, I'm now going to press play on tape. And this is even stranger. So as you can see here, we've got the file name of FlySpy. It's got a file type of 3. So bit 0 being set, so the 1 means protected. We've got a start address of BF00 and a length of 1. Well, we know that can't be right because we can't load anything with just 1 byte, can we? And an execution address of all zeros. So it's quite evident here that Richard has tampered with the cassette header. And in fact, if we look at what's next on the cassette, it appears to be, well, random nonsense. Okay, let's rewind the cassette again. So we haven't got very much to go with here. So we're going to go fairly old school, I should think. I'm going to go back into Adam. And we're going to get rid of that program. So we're going to start afresh. So what do we know? Well, we know that it loads in at address BF00, and what is interesting about that, as you may have caught, there's some screen corruption, or appears to be screen corruption as the load command was working. So we know that it's more than one, and it's going to load into stack space. And what do I mean by that? If I go into trace within Adam, here we go, here's our stack, and our stack pointer is at BFF8. When the CPC initializes itself, it's set to, I think it's C000, just before screen memory. So we know that whatever is loading is going to load and override the stack. We need to be fairly careful on this. Okay, come out of here, and we're going to write a small loader. Oops. Okay, so we're going to have a DE of, let's say, 1000 to start with. A file name length of 0. We don't need to set HL because we're not going to be providing a file name. Call BC77, and then we're going to close the file BC7A. Ordinarily we call BC83 to load the file, but something tells me that whatever I put in here, it will be intercepted. Actually, no, I'm going to demonstrate this to you guys. Ordinarily we have exchange DEHL after a BC77 call, and call hash BC83. So this is, a very clever trick of Richard's here. So if I assemble that, I'm going to go. I'm going to switch out Adam for now, and then I'm going to call. Okay. Rewind the cassette. Did you see that, guys? That's right. Richard has thwarted our attempts at loading in his loader. But if it can be created on the machine, then it can certainly be reverse engineered. So let's go back to Adam. Hopefully it's still intact. So how do we get around this? I'm going to take out the exchange DEHL, and the reality is it doesn't really matter what I did at this point. And I'm just going to call BC7A to close the file and then return. So I'm going to assemble that, tape in, jump back to Adam, and let's jump. And then we're going to press play on cassette again. Okay, we've got control back. Let's just see if it is showing still there. No, it's not. Typically the cassette buffer is stored at B11F. And here we can see it's clearly being tampered with. So we have 16 bytes for the file name, padded with 0 bytes. We've got the file type of 3. We've got a logical length of 0800, which is approximately 2K, which is the size of the buffer. The load address, and this is the actual reported length, a byte of 1. We can ignore that. So basically the header has been falsified. But how is the program actually running without any user intervention? Well, let's have a look to see what we've got loaded in at address 1000. Where did 1000 come from? This was the buffer that we pointed to in DE here. So let's have a look. So we've got some loader code of some description, but we've also got a bunch of these BF06s. And why is that important? Well, remember, this program originally was going to be loaded in at BF00, the only true thing that the header required. the stack is overwritten with this value, so the stack could be absolutely anywhere from FF all the way through. Sorry, BFFFF all the way down, depending upon where you are with the basic program or where the stack is at the time that you issue a load. So really, what he's done is cleverly executing code at BF06. What we know is we loaded this in at 1000 hex. So if we disassemble 1006, look at this. Does this look familiar to you guys? So we've got disable interrupt. This command here, 7F8D out CC, basically switches the ROMs off. We've got another little sneaky trick here. He's going to load hash 38, which I think is RC6, with the value of the stack pointer. So whatever the stack pointer is holding at this point, and he's going to load the high byte, remember, little endian, in at 39. He's then going to use some data at BF00, 02 and 04 to determine where the code is going to be and where it's going to be moved to. He then XORs the value that's in A, so the initial seed value is here with this load A with the contents of memory 39. XOR it, store it back and perform an LDI, and then a return if parity odd. So have we completed BC? Is BC 0? Otherwise we're going to loop around. Now if you followed the Dizzy tutorial, you'll see that this is a fairly familiar trick that was used by Speedlock, but let's not take my word for it. What we can do within Adam is quite interesting. Remember, the code is at 1006 and it's going to go to 1026, so about 20 hex bytes worth of data. And then let's have a look at the data in in memory. So what he's looking at here, he's going to load HL. So remember, 1000 is our reference point for what should have been in BF00. So HL will equal C000, screen memory address. We've got a DE location of 0040, remember little endian. So this is the least significant byte and the most significant byte. And then BC is loaded up with 02D1, so that's the length of the XOR routine that he's going to use. And also he's pushed the value of DE, which is 40, which will be loaded up here, onto the stack. So when the return code is issued, it's going to continue execution at address 40. Okay, now remember our little program? We need to decode the first part of the loader. So get XOR. I'm just going to put a temporary label in here. Now then, just before I do this, actually, just thinking about it. So C000 would be offset by 100 from BF00. So that would be located at 1100 if we apply the same offset. And as you can see here, it's clearly encoded or encrypted data. Let's have a look, see if he's left a message for us, like some programmers do. Doesn't appear so. Okay, now the little trick with Adam is that we can disassemble code back into source as such. We use the H command for that, so we're going to do H1006, which is the address of the first decode. We've got no text, but the end address was 1026. And here we go. So we've thrown back into the editor where we had to get XOR. It's added in a comment. We've got the DI, we've got the load BC 7F8D to switch out the ROMs. I'm actually going to delete that. We've got the load 38 with stack pointer and load A with 39, then the HL, DE, BC, etc. Now what I'm going to do is, just to prove a point, I'm not going to run this as is, because obviously we're going to end up with some corruption. To demonstrate the point about the stack pointer, I'm going to move this address here. We're going to store the contents of stack pointer at, let's say, F00, and we're going to load at F01. Now HL, obviously we're loading memory in where we've decided to load it at 1000 hex, so we're going to change that to HL with 1000. No, actually we're not, because that's going to point to the wrong address anyway. We're going to change that to 1100, which would have been the #C000, the screen address. The destination, we know it's #40, but we can load it in from here, 1002. We're going to put in the BC from 1004 hex, and then we've got the LDI, RET, etc. Now, if we did this and left that alone, it would then carry on executing as the loader was expecting. So I'm going to delete the push, and we're going to assemble that. So if we do disassemble, what did I call it? Was it first XOR? Oh, I can't believe I just typed that. So disassemble get XOR. So this is loaded in memory and is now under our control. So if we just trace this, so we're going to load memory address at F0 with a stack pointer. So kill #F00 BFF8, which is where our stack pointer is, and you can see here the magic value BF that will be loaded into A. So let's and here we go. The accumulator A is now set to BF, which is the seed value for the XOR routine. Okay, and here we go. So the destination is 40 hex, length is 2D1 hex, and then we're going to XOR whatever is in the accumulator, which was BF, with whatever was in memory. And if you know your opcodes, you know that the F3 byte here is a DI command, disable interrupts. We could carry on tracing this until it returns, but we're not going to do that here. I just wanted to demonstrate what was happening. Okay, so what we will do is we'll do jump get XOR, and then if we disassemble 40, we now have some loader code. Okay, which is the next execution address. So let's have a look. Let's go back to here. So disassemble 40, and we're going to go to here. So again, we're switching out the ROMs. I wouldn't worry too much about that. But what Richard does next is that he sets HL at memory address 310, basically pokes it with the value of 0, increments HL, and then he does a comparison to see if H has reached the end of 0. So you load H with A with H, or it with itself basically. So has H reached 0? If it hasn't, carry on. So basically what he's doing is he's wiping out memory from 310 all the way through to 0. And this removes any intercept code that we might want to introduce. He's also wiping out any of the AMSDOS, any of the tape buffer, any of the firmware calls. So basically he's trying to make our job more challenging or more difficult. He then continues to say checks for HL to become 3F, so he's basically wiping out all of the restarts commands as well. So basically all memory from 310 hex all the way through to 00, 3F becomes 0. He's wiping it all out. And we don't really want that in our code because that doesn't help us. The next thing is the jump relative. to address 70. So let's have a look at address 70. Okay, now what we've got here is BC set to BC00, and he's doing some CRTC initialization. A little bit overkill really, Richard. I don't understand why you needed to do this, because I think you're pretty much using the defaults with the exception of a cheeky little screen address change for HL. But basically loads up HL to point to the contents of 5B hex, and he loops through until 16 parameters have changed. Let's see. If I move this in here, let's see if you can see that. So basically he's going to set each of these values from 0 to 16 on the CRTC, and we can see here what the defaults are for PAL, CCAM and NTSC. And all of this is loaded up from 5B, so let's have a look at address 5B. These are the 16 bytes, so 3F, 28, 2E, 80, etc, etc. These all relate to the defaults, with the exception of the start address of HL, the high bytes for where to rasterize the screen, and he set that to 30 hex. We don't really need to worry about that, but we don't need to execute it either. So let's go back to 70. He then goes and performs additional initialization here with the inks registers at 7F10. So basically he's setting the inks to whatever is in hardware. Sorry, after comparing that, he then calls 8C here to set the hardware ink table, not the same as software ink, and I'll show you how to convert those shortly in a small little interlude. The table is set at 6B, and if we have a look at what's in memory address 6B, since we're only looping around until we reach the value 4 here, the hardware inks are set to 14, 14, 17, 04, 15, except there's an OR command here. So basically he's ORing that with 40, so that will become 54, 54, 57, 44, 55 in hex. So let's go back to 70 again. He makes the call to set the hardware palette, and then he jumps relative to A6. Now this looks a little bit more familiar, doesn't it? This looks like loaded code because we've got a load address, a length and a call, but we have this call here to F0. So let's have a look at this. And this is another little sneaky trick. So what Richard's doing here is he's switching in the ROM banks. So he's looping all the way through to see if there's anything present that shouldn't be. Now, if a ROM hasn't been enabled, it will default to the previous ROM, I think, or to basic, whatever is in slot 0, so basic is in 0. So he performs a compare to make sure that bit 7 is set when he loads in the byte at C00. Now what do I mean by that? Within Adam I can press Control E, and you can see here we're now pointing at external as an external ROM, and if we disassemble C00, which is normally the screen memory, we can see here that we actually do have some valid code, and because the background, I think we'll show around, is background and foreground ROM, basic will always have bit 7 set 80, and the rest we don't need to worry about. So he is checking, oops, I've forgotten the address again. Joys of getting old, isn't it? It is F0, okay. So he checks to see if bit 7 is set. If it's not 0, we're going to loop an increment C which points to the next ROM and carry on. He's also checking for AMSDOS in ROM slot 7 again to make sure that we haven't got anything else loaded. So we want to have a look at what's in ROM 7. We type in E7 and you can see here the external ROM has changed to 7. And then let's have a look. Address C073 is a 50 a byte is 50 hex, load D, B, which will match. So again, if that's not 0, he's going to loop out to 133 or to 11C here, which will jump to 133. And if we disassemble 133, it's kill code. So he loads he primes HL with the next available piece of memory, pokes it with 0, sets the destination and the length to be all of memory, and then does an LDIR command, which is short form, which will just wipe everything out. So self-destruct code. So we don't want that to be executed, and really we don't need F0 executed. If you're running your CPC without any external ROMs, it's absolutely fine. But you'll find that FlySpy from the cassette, if you've got Utopia or Discology or Maxam or any of your favourite tools, the code will just stop working. So again, it's a bit of protection. Make sure that you also haven't got a multi-face or a Hackit or any of the tools. And interestingly, within the game, when the game's up and running, he performs this check before it starts running, and it's quite possible he'll do it at random events to make sure that you're not switching on any of the tools that were available at that time. But that is easily overcome. So what do we have here? So we've managed to load in the initial loader code here in at 1000 and bypass the automatic execution. The reason that he uses this this cheeky little check here at 38, one is if you've got interrupts enabled, it will corrupt the program, because an RST #38 will try to be executed and that will be wrong. The seed byte of BF is to make sure that you've not set the stack lower than BF00 to be able to intercept his loader. So he's loaded this with a few tricks, and this is why I think it's one of the better tricks in the protection systems that were back in the day. You know, it's one of the most memorable ones for me. So what do we do now? Well, we know that from A6 we don't need to call this, so we're going to bypass that. And we can see here stack pointer has been modified. We're loading some data in at 310 hex for 3 FFF bytes, and that sounds very screen oriented to me, loading screen. Call 111F, we can have a quick look at that, but I suspect that that is just the turbo loader code. He then takes whatever's in memory at 310, wants to send it to the screen at C000 for a length of 3 FFC, and performs an LDIR instruction. Next up, again, we're loading data in at 310 hex for 5000 hex bytes. And again, a call to what looks like a loader, and then IX will be set to whatever the last byte was, and this will most likely be 5310. He's then set a length of 6950, calls 11F, and then we get into some final loader code here. So he sets the stack pointer all the way to the top of screen memory. It loads HL with EB, which is here. Destination C7D1, which is in the screen memory. Pushes that address onto the stack, C7D1. Sets BC to 5 bytes and then performs an LDIR instruction. So basically he's going to copy everything starting from EB for 5 bytes into screen memory, and then he performs another move. So he takes all the data that was loaded in 310, destination into 100 hex for a length of B950, priming those registers, disables interrupts and returns. So these registers are preempted, and he's returning into screen memory, which will perform this instruction. Load increment repeat, LDIR, So basically it's going to move a chunk of memory from 310 hex to 100 hex, destroying the original loader code, and putting the game into where it was intended originally, before jumping to address 7756. Hopefully that's clear, but again, we need to look at how we're going to intercept all of this. So let's have a look again. We know we jump in at A6. We're interested in code from A9 all the way through until here, this final call. We also have another issue, but let's deal with this first. So we get the last address is D1. So let's move our code here to let's call it load it. I've forgotten everything again. Memory like a sieve. Okay, so we're going to perform the magic H command. So from A9 all the way through to D1 by the looks of it. Yep, D1. I'm going to add in a DI command there. We can test this, but what I'm going to do is add in some code to save. Now, here's the challenge, guys. We've got data loading in at 310 hex. We've got 5,000 hex bytes, so the end address is 5310. The next section of code is 6950. Now then, if we calculate that, so let's say let's do it 310 plus 5,000, plus 6950. The final load address is going to be at BC60. Do you see the problem here? We're basically going to overwrite the firmware. We're also going to overwrite AMS-DOS variables and everything else. So it's not really viable to load everything at the address that the game needs. So what do we do? We can load the screen in as we'd expect. We can load the first set of code in for 5,000 hex bytes, but what we can't do is load the next 6950 hex bytes into consecutive memory space from 5310 onwards, because obviously it doesn't help us here. So we're going to modify this and load IX at 1000. Okay. Now then, that doesn't help us still. So what we need is a save routine. And what we're going to do is use a similar technique that we had before. Actually, let's fname def m. Let's call this flyspy0.bin. File name length is it's equal to current memory address minus fname. So we're going to get a length there. So we know that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bytes in. We need to modify that. So we're going to load HL with fname plus 6 increment HL. Help if I could. Point to HO. Let's have a buffer of screen memory. Load B, comma, file name length, and then we're going to call. What are we going to call? BC8C. So we need to preserve some registers. So I think what we did before, I'm going to push BC push DE, push IX. And we're going to pop HL, pop DE, pop BC. Why? Because the call to BC98 sets HL to be the memory address to start the save. DE is the length of data to save. BC is the execution address. When you set the file type to 2, and I'm going to call BC8F to close the file. And we're going to return. So what we want to do is we want to save the data as and when it's available. So what we're going to do is I'm going to push DE. Oops. I'll tell you what. Let's do it here before the LDIR. Push DE. Push BC for the length, and then we're going to pop DE and pop IX. So basically we're going to store the address that was in the destination here onto the stack, and then the length onto the stack, and then we're going to pop it so that now DE is the length, so D equals BC, and pop IX equal DE in the earlier, and then we're going to call save. And again here we're going to push IX, push DE, pop DE, pop IX. We can do that because these variables are set up. We're going to call save again. Now then, I'm going to push IX, push DE, pop DE, pop IX. But this time, actually we don't need to save DE. We'll take that out, save a couple of bytes. We're going to save the first 5,000 bytes of this, call save, and then I'm going to load IX with 6,000, because that's 1,000 hex plus 5,000, and then D with the remainder, which is 1950 bytes, call save, and then we're just going to perform an RST0 because the data is corrupt. We can't run the game at this point. But wait, we also know that saving files to disk will take a bit of time, so it's likely the cassette will have moved forward at this point, missing the markers. So what we need to do in our save command is add some command to switch off the cassette motor. So F600 out C, C. Disable the interrupt there. So this will switch the cassette motor off. And then of course we need to switch the cassette motor back on again, so load BC with F610, I think it is, yep, out C. So we've added in our code here, stop the cassette motor, stop the relay, perform our save function, and then switch the cassette motor back on and return to continue. So if all's gone well, hopefully, maybe, this should be our tape to disk routine. Did I explain earlier when we did the H command to take disassembly back into assembler, whenever it recognises a jump relative or a jump address that's in range, it automatically adds a label, and the label will be R in this case, and then the original memory address 101F. So there's the jump relative. So rather than point to a specific memory location, we can assemble this wherever we need. Question is, will it work? Let's see if we've got any assembler errors first, and let's switch off the... Okay, next problem is we don't want it at A000 as we had when we started, because there's a high chance we could overwrite that. So let's change it to a common address that we used back in the day, BE80, which is in the reserved stack space, but there should be enough code. The question is, did I remember to poke Adam? No. Okay, so we can go back to basic, and we're going to poke 4051 with 255. Adam was loading at address 4000 hex or 16384. The offset is documented in the Adam manual. This will allow us to assemble code higher in high memory. So now there we go. Right, so here we go. Originally the code would have returned after it loaded that loader, but we need to get the XOR out. So we're going to take that, but it will still return back control after it's performed the loader that it expected. So what we want to do is, we can either leave this as is. What we want to do is load HL with load it, push HL onto stack. So when the ret PO here is executed, we should jump straight into the load it code, which is our modified version of Richard's loader. Question is, will it work? So first things first, let's make sure that we've got disk ready. Tape.in, just for clarity, I'll just tape in, disk out. So all input will be from the cassette, and when we write the file out, it will be to disk. Let's also add in our Adam protection, so BC #7FC0 out. So hopefully if we do corrupt memory or there is a problem, we can get back to our source code. Because we loaded Adam into an extra RAM bank, we're just going to switch it out with these two commands. So do you think it'll work? Well, so far so good. We've got the flashing borders. I deliberately haven't set the screen mode, so this isn't going to look as you would expect it. I didn't see the point of setting the colours up because the game isn't going to be playable anyway at this stage. But let's see what happens. In the video, obviously, I'll fast forward this because obviously you don't want to see every little step. Okay, so we have a little buget. Let's reset it. Okay, let's have a look at the program. Something clearly isn't right. So, thankfully, Adam's preserved everything in memory. So we have our load it routine, and I think the problem is here. Me, obviously, stack pointer 30F, which is in where lower ROM would be if that needs to be switched in. So let's take that out, assemble that. Let's jump back to basic and tape in, disk.out and then call BE80. Just remove any back files I've got, just to make sure I've got enough disk space. Now that we've reset, we should have the files on disk. If I do a cat, you will see my previous tests and examples. But we need to create a loader. Weirdly, I did that earlier. But we have the issue with the hard inks, if you remember earlier. And what I did was I created a program called hardinks.bas back in the 80s, which we'll use. But for now, I'm going to rewind the cassette. I don't know why RVM makes it so difficult to go all the way back to the start without ejecting or whatever. So what we're going to do is, well, let's just test it out first. Mode 1, load FlySpy 1, which should be the loading screen. And as you can see, that's there. We just need to work out what the colours are. And now the question is whether you paid attention earlier to that particular table. But what we'll do is we'll go back to the loader program. I mean, I've written them down here, but it's just so that you can see this for yourself. 7. Let's switch Adam back in again. So this was our copier program. Let's get okay, if you remember here, we had the inks at 6B, so let's have a look at 6B. And we've got 14, 14, 17, 04. So ink 0, ink 1, ink 2, ink 3. Those are the values to remember, but remember we're also ORing it with hash 40, so that will become 54, 54, 57, 44, 55 in hex. So if you want to make a note of those, oops, let's jump back to basic. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to reset that and load the program hard inks. So if you remember the sequence, so 54 comes out as software colour 0 and the colour is black. We had 2 of those, 2 54s. We had a 57, which is 11, sky blue, 44, a number 1, which is blue, and 55, which is a bright blue at 2. So what we can do now is let's just test that. So mode 1, ink 1. Ink 1 was 11. Ink 2 was 1 and ink 3 was 2. Load FlySpy 1. There you go. So we know what the ink colours are for the loading screen. So we're going to jump back to Adam again. Let's just put ink on 26. So we're going to create a new loader for the program. If you remember back to our Dizzy hack, we need to re-enable ROM 7 only if we're running directly from disk with the run flyspy command in this instance, rather than a load and a call. So it's always handy to leave that in there. The next call is to set the screen mode, so load A with 1, call BCOE, which is the firmware call to set the screen mode. We're going to set the border to 0, so BC equals 0, 0, and call BC38. And then we're going to load the 4 inks. So this is a fairly simple loop. I'm pretty sure I could do this a little bit more efficient, but this will do for now. So I'm going to load IX with an ink table. I'm going to load a value, because we don't have flashing inks, C always equals B in this instance. The accumulator always gets corrupt with these calls, and BC32 is the firmware call to set the screen ink colour. We're going to loop around 4 times until that's complete. And if we have a look here at inks, I've set the ink table up as 0, 11, 1 and 2 as we calculated the software version of those inks. So then we get back into the loader code. I'm going to disable the interrupts when I switch the memory back out. So I'm going to switch Adam out of bank 1, sorry, in extended bank 1. Switch back in main memory. I'm going to set up an IX for a load address of the screen at C000. I'm going to call my load function. I'm going to set IX to 310 and call load again, because that block of code, if you remember, loaded up at 310 hex. Next is 5310, which is where the next section of code would have loaded, but remember we've now split this into 2. So we load that in. Not sure why I've added that DI there, that's not really needed. Let's remove that. Load IX with the screen, so we're going to load the rest of the data into screen. At this point we disable interrupts. After that's finished loading, we're going to take what's in screen memory and send it back to address A310, which was where it should be loaded. Remember 3110 plus 5000 hex plus 5000 hex for the first part of the final loader comes to A310. The length was 1950, that was the remainder section, and we're going to copy that back into memory where it belongs. I'm taking this out. Originally, when I created the loader, I loaded it into extra memory. But obviously, if you're on a 464, that's not going to work. We set the stack pointer to all the Fs, as the original loader did. We're going to put in our patch code. The destination to C7D1, again, where the game originally tried to load the loader. Push DE, so we're going to execute at C7D1. BC is primed to the value 5, so we're going to copy 5 bytes from the patch code into memory, into screen address. We load increment repeat, so we copied 5 bytes into screen. The next bit of the original code loaded HL, D and BC to move the code down in memory, so from 310 down to 100 hex for length of B950. And we're going to perform the return instruction, which will return to what was pushed on the stack here at C7D1. This is the patch code, so HLD, BC are already primed. The return code will do an EDBO, LDIR, and then jump to 7756 to execute the game as per the original loader. And you might be familiar with the load that we've set up here. So I'm going to preserve IX to start with. Load HL with file name plus 6, so we're sticking with the standard. Flyspy, increment HL, so flyspy 0 become flyspy 1, 1 will become 2, 3, etc. Point to the file name, use a temporary buffer of C000. It's not really necessary with disk by the looks of it. B is the file name length. So we call a standard firmware call to load at BC77 pop HL, which was what was on the stack. It was IX, so HL equals the address to load the data. Continue the load with BC83, and then we're going to jump or call and return BC78 to close the file. Then we've got the file name defined as flyspy0.bin. File name length is equal to $, which is the current memory location minus file fname, which gives you the total length of that memory address from the start of this memory address. So this will give you that length, and then we've got our inks table. So we can assemble this, put to comma flyspy.bin to save it. Okay, and now if all has gone to plan, okay, let's test it. Reset the machine and run flyspy.
Welcome to flyspy.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Congratulations, you have now hacked flyspy. You've bypassed Richard Aplin's rather elegant protection system, I may say, and copied it to disk. So the question is what's next?